Oh man, you might see the title of this video and think it's hyperbolic or silly, but really, I've just got done, unfortunately I was out last night, so I couldn't catch the stream live. I've just woken up and watched the developer preview tour of the Jade Sea, and god damn, it looks so good. I've taken notes of all the most notable stuff, so I'll distill it down for you guys. I'm going to talk about all the revelations here, and what really struck me. This was definitely, by far, the best of all of their map tour streams so far. Really. And I'm going to try and get that across. Sorry if I sound a little bit stuffy. I'm a bit hungover. I've got a bit of a headache. But we'll see how this goes. Okay, so quick notes on the stream. Pretty much standard style that they did on the other tours, where it's mostly an environment run through while they talk a bit about other stuff. The devs we had, well, we had Ruby as the host. There was Connor Fallon, Kirk Williford, and Chloe Mills, and they kind of rotated a little bit. And generally, just a really chill vibe, really interesting anecdotes and insights from the team on this one. And as far as actually presenting the Jade Sea, it was way better than that trailer we had. Like, way better. The only downside is, I think they stream at a pretty low bit rate. So I'll be showing you guys the footage here in the background right now, probably sped up a bit. And as they move the camera a little bit fast, you do lose a lot of that. I can't fix that. The source material is a bit rubbish. But aside from that, they did manage to give us some good views. Now, here's the thing. Once again, the map had most of the main content cut out. But when I say, once again, I actually mean to the nth degree. This is really weird, guys. On the other streams, like the first stream they didn't cut much content at all. And then in Echo Vowed, they cut a good amount. This map, they described as being extremely spoilery, and they took everything out. Like, normally I talk to you about some of the new enemies and stuff. There's no enemies here. There's no reses, no NPCs of any kind, no interactors. They stripped the map naked, because to even see some of this stuff, they suggest is spoilery. They actually talk as well about how when you actually get in the expansion, you'll be able to explore the Jade Sea really early if you like. You'll be able to just skip ahead. But they say, look, if you go here, it will get spoiled. They give you an in-game warning. So they say, you can do it if you want, but you're going to get spoiled. I guess it's a little bit like, if you start Guild Wars 2 and you skip the personal story, you just run down towards Ore, you'd find Fort Trinity. And you might think, well, what is that? Well, and you'll see packed soldiers and stuff, and that's kind of spoilery. But I guess we're having a similar situation here in End of Dragons. They can't even move the camera in certain places. They can't talk about the end of the meta. They allude to it, and they say it's this amazing thing that's super spoiler town, I think they say. And that they've gone to a ton of effort to merge the story and the metas in this X-Pack, more than they had in the previous ones. So it means there's this big badass moment, but they can't talk about it at all. So I don't know what to make of it, really. Before, I thought they were just being overly spoiler-averse, that probably if we saw the stuff, it wouldn't be that spoilery. But now I'm starting to wonder, what the hell is it? It doesn't strike me as this idle or small excuse anymore. They mentioned that they're having meetings about how to do the presentation best because they want to show it, but they can't. What the hell could this be? Seriously. I'm pretty up to it with the story. And I can't imagine anything that would be such a crazy... Maybe it's the nature of deep sea dragons? Whatever it is, it has to have some pre-existing meaning, no? I mean, they're happy to show us, the speakers and the Jade technology and so on. So what's so bad at this time? No Amphara as well, by the way, this means that was all stripped out. What are we fighting? Is it the Pact or something? I'm not even joking there. I would feel like it would have to be on that level for this to be a spoiler. Is it packed airships are a part of the meta or something? Who knows? Alright, so before I get into my favorite stuff that they announced, which is really more environment stuff, let's talk a little bit about story since we're on there. Here are all my big notes I took away from it. First of all, they are confirming that even though basically the Kurziks and Luxons are vassalized, as was said in the Movement of the World, that descendants of them are still around. And you can interact with them a bit. Now, that's an easy thing to throw out. In Guild Wars' lore, there's technically Orions still living in Kryta, just sort of in hiding because of the negative associations with the place. But we never really see them, right? I get the sense that End of Dragons will actually let us interact with those guys a bit. Though, whether they're going to look really exotic and have all the dress and the face paints and so on, I think that's all going to be gone. We go to only a couple of, named locations. The Jade Quarry's back, and it's pretty much... It's not like a PvP game type. It's just sort of a place you get to explore. A little bit like how in Core, in the Brisbane Wildlands, you can actually explore one of those old Guild Wars 1 arenas, and they do a little bit of an allusion to it, but not much. Obviously, we didn't see any events because they stripped it all out, so who knows what they do. We see a place called the Emerald Bluff Village, which is this little wooden village on slats next to the Jade Sea. And don't worry, I'll talk about the Jade in a second. I actually think we've seen that Emerald Bluff place in some of the concept art. Some of the first concept art they showed us, like way back at the start of the year. The Gyalar hatchery's there, and it looks really gorgeous. I'm guessing there'll be a lot of content there, since obviously the siege turtle is a mount and you're going to be growing it from a baby, so you probably spent at least some time dealing with that place. They talked about this thing that's been showing up in all the streams. Now, I haven't really talked about this on any of my videos because I assumed it didn't matter. There are some weird little like devices that are popping up in the footage every now and then. They look to me like kind of just random, reused, almost exalted-y little devices, and I never thought very much of it, but they point out that actually this is a story delivery system, that they're projectors. You'll press F on them and you will get news and updates about the world. Now, that might just be little news snippets, or it could actually be big story beats. And so that's why they're all over the place. It's extra ways for them to implement world building and setting information. And that's quite interesting to me. It's interesting that it's probably going to create these holograms, right? And they've got them all in different sizes, which is very Aetherblade-y. You know, when you do like the Aether path, dungeon path, there's a bunch of holograms there, for example. So I wonder whether the Aetherblades are somehow responsible for some of this, or some of the technology that people have found in End of Dragons and June's created out of Jade Tech has led to holographic stuff being a big deal here. But anyway, the idea of that as a communicator, it actually gives us plot, I think is really good. It's kind of like, I'm imagining it's going to be a lot like Always Time for Timey. Remember Path of Fire? You'd get these optional places you could go to press F, and Timey would give you like extra details, but they weren't actually mainlined in the story. I loved that system in POF. I thought it was brilliant, and I think that they quite like it too, and this is just like an expanded version of that. It's not always communicating with Timey, it's with any number of different things based on these different things you can press F on and get voice acted story. And you know, they've got better and better at this. For as much as people you know, talk down about the Icebreed Saga, I think that the start of it with the Grothmar Valley stuff, with all that conversation about Bram getting drunk over the phone and stuff, was really good, and I bet it's going to be exactly those kinds of vibes all over the whole expansion. They actually say in the discussion about this, they like allude to an Act 5. They say, oh, we've disabled them for all the streams because, you know, you don't want this talking about Act 5 to us, which kind of is news. Heart of Thorns' story, the first expansion, that was broken into 4 acts. And that was a little bit deceptive to say Heart of Thorns has 4 acts, really. The last act is just like 2 instances. Those little bits in Dragon's Stand. Path of Fire was technically only broken into 3 acts, but each one was really long. Overall, Path of Fire was a much longer story expansion than Heart of Thorns was. And now we're hearing about 5 acts for End of Dragons. Now, I don't know, that might be deceptive just as Heart of Thorns was, or it could actually be suggestive of quite a long story. I also kind of am interested, you know, it was an idle comment, but structurally the idea that I might hear Act 5 information when I'm like backtracking and stuff, that might suggest a little bit of how they're delivering the story in terms of like going all over the maps and actually utilizing a lot of them, and it's not just like a linear path from A to B. This expansion might have us going, you know, deep into certain regions and then returning, and then deep back down again, and sort of going all over the place, which I think could be a very credible and fun way for them to do it too. Again, it might mean that even though they don't have so much environment, they can get a shit ton of story out of it because we're zigzagging all over the place. I like the sound of that. I know some of you guys might not, but I think that sounds cool. All right, and it was just an idle comment, so who knows. They talk a little bit about the Jade Moor, which appeared in the trailer. There's a quarry area where it looks like it's this story of the outcasts and the idea of Canaxai and all the demons beneath the jade, where if you dig too deep, you might hit a pocket of something bad. And it looks like there's just basically a simple event on the map in which they dig a bit too deep and the Kraken comes out. The Kraken that is maybe the one being echoed in the fractals, maybe referential to those Guild Wars 1 events, who knows. But it really doesn't look like a big deal. It is not the meta. The meta is something completely different, and again, supposedly spoiler town. Another little thing about the story is we see a giant crab machine thing. They didn't want to spoil it too much. It's at a quarry area. And they basically say, look, this is a mining machine. The Empire is very serious about getting Jade. Like, they'll go to almost any length to get it. It probably strikes me the End of Dragons plot big issue is that the Jade supply is going to be threatened in some way. Maybe vying factions, maybe the Deep Sea Dragons, something like that. Anyway, the thing, again, they kind of tentatively call it a crawler. It looks wild. It's like this really rich kind of steel color with very sci-fi like technology flowing through it. It kind of makes me think of Guild Wars 1, those big devices that the Luxons had, like the Halcyon, like a giant, you know, vessel that they moved. I wonder if it's kind of like the logical continuation of that. Maybe one of the strings of the Luxton Armada, one of their clans had a hand in this somehow, even though they've largely been brought into the fold. Like the Crab clan, they were very well known for their jade mining. So maybe this, and the thing looks a bit like a crab. So I wonder if there's something of a connection there. Maybe they rose to prominence now that mining jade is the most important thing. If this kind of tech is in a lot of places, like in the city itself, wow, I wonder what it will look like. Because it will look a lot more sci-fi and like that old sci-fi concept art we saw from the studio than we might be expecting. I would say, though, the other cool thing about this stream, and we'll move into the environments here with this, I suppose, is you do get a little bit of an appearance at the end of the stream at, like, a lot of buildings that feel very Kaineng-ish. And I think we're starting to get glimpses of what the city will actually look like. It seems fairly similar to how it looked 250 years ago, how it looked in Factions. Faithfully recreated, I mean. It looks technically much more impressive. So I'm very happy with that. They finally allude, I mean, this is kind of in the story section, they allude to the Harvest Temple. So it is in the expansion, but they can't show it. Or don't want to, probably both. So who the hell knows what's going on there. We've obviously got a bit of concept art, so it wasn't too much doubt in my mind that the Harvest Temple was going to be here, but they don't want to show it in the trailers or the preview streams. That's to explore once the game actually comes out. So let's talk about the environments. This is my favorite map, by far. And it's not even really about the Jade, just the general environments. Like, they opened up this stream, you guys should have seen the footage fly by already in the background, with like examining some of these lovely mosaics in the floors, and you see them like embedded into the walls. They're really incredible. They have like this like old temple kind of vibe, where there's these red walls and kind of these like dark muted areas where there's like a little bit of dust hanging in the air, or leaves gently falling and floating down. They look awesome. I mean, granted, it's not really Jade Sea to me, it's more like Xingji, but they've given this vibe best so far on this stream going to these areas. So really, literally the first 5 minutes alone of this preview looked more gorgeous to me than anything in the trailer. Later on, they go to another like garden type area filled with cherry blossom trees, and it like weaves and winds its ways through the cliffs. Again, it feels very Xingji here to me, but you obviously look out in the distance and you see the sea out there, which is really quite nice as well. So here's the coolest thing, ready? My biggest takeaway from the whole stream was a little comment they made fairly early on about the borders of the map. You know what, I want to dedicate a video just to this. Maybe I'll put this in the thumbnail or something, because people have to know about this. They described it as an open bordered map that is land-based. This is the first time they've done with this. They've prototyped it. They like the idea. They're already excited about it. And I am too. They show it off. So what are we talking about? In Guild Wars 2, what they've been doing classically is at the edge of a map, they'll like build some kind of big ass cliff or something, which obscures your vision, and you have to walk around the cliff, and then you'll find a portal into the next map, right? And then there's specific designated loading zones. And because they want to get as much value and space out of every playable map as they can, that's tended to have all these big rectangular mountains all over the world. They're not really there in lore, you're not really supposed to think about them, but you can notice them. And even through the expansions, they've tried to hide it as best they can, but you definitely have the experience. I get the experience a lot in Dragon's Stand. I get it a lot in Auric Basin. Verdant Brink, they actually managed to avoid it to a certain degree, but if you think about like near the entrance of the guild hall on the north border, you get it everywhere. Path of Fire especially disappointed me with this, because Path of Fire was supposed to be a desert, right? And there's many different kinds of deserts, obviously, but I wanted the sweeping long sand dunes. What are they called? What's that name for like where sand piles up, like in the Sahara? Anyway, that's the feeling I wanted. I wanted to look out across this unending ocean of sand. But very often, you'd see, like, there's a big wall there, you know, either because they've built it in lore because they're, like, the Awakened wall, or it's just a big rectangular cliff, and it was such a shame. So the question is, will the Jade Sea be inhibited in the same way? Will it be, as the devs themselves are joking about, a Jade bathtub? That's what they call it. And the answer is no. So the other way they do borders is when it's water, and they just have you swim against the edge of the map, and it says a current pushes you back. And if you're flying on a griffin really high up, you still get the same message that you're out in the ocean or whatever. But they do, so when there's water, yeah, you can look off into the distance. Water's pretty boring to look at though. You know, when it's just water unending, it's just a flat plane, and it tends to not feel very good. So think about like a lot of Living World maps do this. Like you think about like Ember Bay. So what they've done with the Jade Sea is they've done the water style boundary, but it's on land, and it's not just infinite nothingness. They actually tease and hint at assets out there. So they get the best of both worlds, and it will hopefully feel like a true immersive big sea. I'm honestly really excited about this. I think it's going to open up and make the whole thing feel a lot more immersive. The only question is, if I'm flying at top speeds on a griffin to the edge of the map, am I going to accidentally not know I'm at the edge of the map? And I'm going to have a really weird experience with how they do invisible walls and stuff. I hope that that isn't a problem. I guess the roller beetle as well, because both the griffin and the roller beetle, maybe the sea turtle, all look really fun on this map, as you'll be able to ramp over these waves in generally wide open areas. But if I hit the boundary a lot and it feels ugly, that's the only downside to this, which hopefully won't happen. I mean, we'll just have to get in there and see. But that was a fantastic revelation for me. And that's a good revelation just for Guild Wars going forwards, because hopefully if this works, they'll just keep doing it through, you know, the next Living World season and all the other expansions to continue on. I hope they've done it in the Echo Valley Forest, right? They should totally do it in the Echo Valley Forest and just hit loads of trees out there. Why not? All right, I'm getting hysterical and bringing my headache back. We'll have to talk a bit quieter here. Moving on to some other stuff that struck me. Regular water was actually quite interesting to see how they're utilizing it here in the Jade Sea. I know that sounds a bit stupid because it's just water. What's fun about it? Like I mentioned waterfalls a second ago, but they've got like some very still bodies of water in there that have got like all these little leaves like just floating and bobbing on the surface. That looks really good and really striking. I haven't seen Guild Wars do that before. They did another section which was maybe the highlight of the whole stream for other people, which was that trailer shot. Do you guys remember the one shot from the trailer that I really liked? Where we were under the Jade on a skiff in like a little, you know, cavern. Well, they went in there and the place looks incredible. They didn't explore deep. They said you'll have to get in game and play it. And oh my lord, if they have a lot more locations like that, that's a really crazy cool vibe. That's like being in the ice at Drakkar Lake, but now it's Jade and it's a lot more closed in and it's quite claustrophobic, but very, very tranquil. Like unbelievable. They even use the word teal to describe the lighting in there, which I feel like is a bit of a nod to all of the discussion people have been doing about the new color of the Jade. I was also impressed how coherent they were in terms of where the water level was supposed to be. Do you guys remember Lake Doric? When, you know, the idea of the Lake Doric patch was there was supposed to be a giant lake there, but the dam got breached, so it all drained away. And when we get to the map, they're like hinting at where the old water level would be, and they were very, very clever about it and very careful. Well, they've done the same thing here. The idea of where the actual surface of the Jade Sea once was and how much has now been mined out gives you this incredible sense of scale. And they're really consistent about how they did it. I thought that was very, very cool. And yeah, the story idea, I guess, is that so much has been mined out. In a weird way, we're kind of exploring the Jade Sea like we were in Guild Wars 1, but also we're not, because a lot of those plateaus we once upon a time walked around on have just been brutally stripped away, and we're kind of in totally new places now. Like, you're walking on the sand down at the bottom. You could get a bit of a vibe from that from the trailer, but it's really clear on the stream. That's not to say that the whole sea is gone, for what it's worth. There are some pretty sweeping vistas out there. And again, because it's an open bordered map, when you look out across the open borders, typically it looks like it's going to be, you know, just large swathes of jade, which is nice. What else was there? There was this really cool storage room filled with like ludicrously weird looking jade tech, like actual jade tech. Like they showed a building at one point with like one of the, there was the crawler I mentioned. There was like a pipe with crazy energy flowing through it. And then you go into like this warehouse and it's very calm and it's very quiet in there. And it's nice to have like a proper interior, I have to say. Hopefully the city map itself will give us a lot of rooms like this. But inside you see all of the jade tech and it doesn't feel like Asura tech. People have been making that comparison a lot. I think the shift from like the blue to the green, as well as some other little subtle things, have made this feel like very like near sci-fi. It's like almost modern looking tech. Like there's a thing in there that looks like a microwave, just like a real life microwave. And I know that sounds really tacky and like it wouldn't work very well, but I think it does work. And to any purists about the lore here, may I remind you that in Guild Wars 1 in Nightfall, there's a bunch of random dialogue talking about real life televisions and aeroplanes and stuff. See, they were just getting visions of the future of Jade tech, and now finally that plot has come true. But the room looks really weird, very new vibes, and really very rich and different feeling, which is what I want from an expansion. I want to feel like they're pushing all these new environments on me. Okay, and that takes me to the sea itself. It, of course, looks way better in-game than it did in the trailer. Now, to be clear, the color is preserved. I'm pretty convinced that it's because dragon magic has infused it, made it even more valuable, and so on. I think there's a lore reason why they changed the color. I think they've actually been quite brave about the color, and once you see it in-game, I mean, I wasn't thinking about it much anymore. The color is most striking in certain areas, but beyond that, I think the sea looks fine. It's not as, like, gloopy and sludgy and smooth, as the trailer made it look. In fact, right at the start, I love that there was some dev commentary where they instantly pointed out sea foam. They were like, look at this. Yeah, look at the sea foam here. Because everyone in the community had been saying, oh, where's all the sea foam? Where's all the ripples? I even said that myself. There's loads of ripples. You just kind of got to look at it in game and like get the camera in the right way, which the trailer just somehow managed to not do. There's proper flows in it. Even the like really hard cuts, you know, like those very sheer blocks that we saw in the trailer with the people swinging their pickaxes. Even they look fine because they're not everywhere. They're only in a couple of places, so they're really striking specifically because of how smooth they are and how dissimilar they are from the rest of the sea. Once you view it in context, it's fine. It's just, I guess the trailer makers thought, oh, this looks cool, and then they put too much of it and it gave the totally wrong impression. In the storage room as well, for what it's worth, one of my criticisms was that you couldn't see creatures and stuff in the Jade. When that storage room, there's all these blocks like lining the walls. Like it looks almost like an aquarium, right? Except, you know, they're not fish tanks of water, that it's just jade blocks and the stuff's frozen. They look like they had a really rich variety of different things in there, including even like corals and stuff, which is stuff that Guild Wars 1 didn't do. So this is just all stuff exactly that I wanted. I feel pretty much terrible about my commentary yesterday. You guys might want to watch the video in reaction to that trailer, because I don't know whether it's me or the trailer itself, but I think it did a real disservice to the game. Like, did they piss off someone on the team? Like, honestly, I feel bad. Yesterday, I was openly in conversation on Twitch with you guys about the idea, given the quality of the trailer and Xingji and Echovald, that maybe they're producing the expansion like Living World, but they're going to sell it as an expansion. They're going to package it as an expansion and sell it as an expansion, but still it's basically Living World as far as they're concerned in terms of the resources they can put into it. But I think that's totally wrong. As soon as you see the stream, you realize, no, this does feel like an expansion. This does feel well budgeted and high quality. It was just kind of a poo trailer, I suppose. Another thing that's not even about the Jade that I quite liked from this map is this is the first map that I didn't get like a really Heart of Thornsy or Living Worldy feel about like the rock textures and the grasses and the grounds. There's something about the way that they paint the floors and like put the rocks and stuff around that ever since Heart of Thorns has felt very, very consistently done. Path of Fire was a break from it though, because it was all, you know, a lot more sands and a lot more new brandy type assets and stuff. But then we saw it coming back through Season 4, we saw it back in the Icebrood Saga, and I even kind of saw it a lot in Xingji and Echovald, and that disappointed me. But here in the Jade Sea, all the rocks feel kind of new. They're like those big tall pillars you often see associated with East Asia. I forget what they're called, but usually they've got called, but they've usually got like all mist and fog around them and stuff. It feels really unique. You know, there's like cherry blossom, like leaves and petals striking across the floor. The textures generally just feel different. They're a much lighter color as well. So I don't get those Living Worldy Heart of Thornsy vibes, and that contributes a lot. It's not even just that the Jade was done, in my opinion, really quite well. It's just a different color. So there you have it. That's their just over an hour stream, distilled down the best of the best, I think. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the footage. One final little note, and I loved this too, they did mention mini dungeon on this map. And specifically, here's what's so cool. When they mentioned mini dungeon, they even alluded to the Dwarven Room mini dungeon in Path of Fire, which is so good. I know it was years ago now, and there's no like repeatable achievements or any reason to go there regularly, but that Dwarven mini dungeon, exploring that, was one of the absolute highlights of Path of Fire for me. Go back and watch my vlog series that I did every day after Path of Fire came out. I reviewed my experiences in game, where I was, how I was going with it, and my god, that Dwarven area was awesome. And they're still thinking about that with End of Dragons, and apparently there's one in the Jade Sea, hopefully of the same caliber. I mean, oh, now we're going down and we're going into the Jade or something. Oh, could be very good. So there you have it, guys. I loved this stream. This was definitely the best one. We got a big break now for Kaineng Center, but I'm very curious to see what they'll do with that. Thanks very much for watching, for listening along. I don't really have any great video to plug or anything for you today. Just please feel free to check out any of the stuff I've done over the past few days. There's been a lot of coverage. In fact, here, I'll tell you what, the Siege Turtle PC Gamer Scoop. If you missed that, the final mount has been announced and all the details are there. That's also on my channel, so you guys can check that out. Thank you, everybody. Let me know what you think in the comments. Still hating on it? Let's see. I'd love to hear and have some back and forth down below. See you next time, guys. Alright, there you have it. If you're not going to be in the comments, there's the link on screen right there for the Siege Turtle.